Oleg, I can't go against my mother. What will my parents think of me? The wife shouted. Why do you always worry about what they will say? You've been an adult and independent for a long time, objected the husband. Conversations like this were common in their household. Although she had moved from her parents' house to her husband's apartment, she still felt internally dependent on them. Being the only child in her family, she had been raised with indulgence. By the age of 20, she had grown tired of her wealthy parents' constant supervision. In order to break free from their control, she started dating Oleg and soon married him. Anna's parents strongly opposed the marriage, especially her mother. The disgruntled expression on her mother's face at the wedding was hard to ignore. Olga Ivanovna believed that Oleg was not suitable for her daughter's status. Coming from an ordinary family and working as a manager without much personal wealth, he did not meet her expectations. Even though he owned an apartment, his mother-in-law was not impressed by their two-bedroom flat in a suburban area far from the city center. She believed her daughter deserved better and a more refined lifestyle. The couple had been together for almost 5 years, and their anniversary was approaching. However, life took an unexpected turn. One morning, Oleg decided to leave his car in the parking lot and take a taxi to work. After finishing his shift, he planned to go out with his colleagues to a bar and have a few drinks, knowing that he shouldn't drive in such a state. Oleg returned home not too late. His wife was in the living room watching TV when she heard him come in. She turned off the TV and announced that she was going to bed. On the couch lay a set of bedding, indicating they would be sleeping separately that night. I don't want your breath anywhere near me, she stated abruptly. The husband was taken aback, as his wife had never spoken to him like that before. He couldn't help but think that her mother's influence was at play again, poisoning her mind against him. He had endured enough of her meddling, and now the consequences were finally showing. Oleg decided to confront his wife about the issue. He couldn't continue living with his mother-in-law's constant interference. The weekend passed with the couple staying home, lost in their own thoughts. On Monday morning, Oleg headed towards the underground parking lot where his car was parked. As he approached, he noticed a fresh scratch on the rear passenger door. The car had been left in the parking lot since Friday, meaning the incident had occurred over the weekend. Feeling frustrated, Oleg decided to check the footage from his dash camera, a wise purchase he had made. Not only did it capture events on the road, but it also had a view of the cabin. Since he had some time before work, he quickly browsed through the recordings on his phone, starting from Friday. To his surprise, he spotted something unusual in the footage from that day. His wife had entered the car, peering towards the passenger window. She smiled, and seconds later, a man sat in the front seat. Oleg realized it was his neighbor, Dmitry, although he hadn't recognized him at first. Watching them sitting and chatting in the car, Oleg wondered why they had decided to meet there. However, after a minute, everything became clear. His wife started stroking her neighbor's hand, and they shared a passionate kiss. The situation escalated. They reclined the seats, undressed, and committed an act of infidelity right in front of his eyes. Oleg sat in complete shock, barely able to focus on the scratch on the car door. Looking at the timestamp on the video, he realized that he had been at the bar with his colleagues at the time. It became clear why his wife had met him coldly that evening and gone to bed early. Amidst his emotions, Oleg realized he had to put them aside for now. He had to go to work, and drastic measures at the moment wouldn't change anything. The betrayal had already happened, and the most important thing was that he had learned the truth. On the way to the office, he couldn't help but think about how this situation would affect his life. The neighbor's wife, who had recently given birth to a child, was home with the baby all the time. Privacy was a luxury they couldn't boast of in his apartment, given the nosy grandmother neighbor who thrived on local gossip. So, they had chosen the car as a neutral meeting place. Conveniently, Oleg had his own car, and Dmitry didn't. Anger overwhelmed Oleg, and he gripped the steering wheel tightly. His calm demeanor often made those around him perceive him as cold and aloof, but he was simply a strategic and calculating man. He didn't believe in impulsive actions, nor did he resort to violence. Instead, he preferred subtle ways to influence those who wronged him. Besides, he knew how much his wife cared about her parents' opinion of her. Oleg had long ago noticed how her interest in her career was waning. On the way to the office, thoughts swarmed in Oleg's head as he pondered the situation. She preferred vacations and shopping to other activities, and their total budget couldn't cover all her desires. She was thrilled when her parents gave her some expensive branded items. Wanting to please them, she made sure not to disappoint. The idea of how to surprise Yana and her family quickly came to Oleg's mind. Unexpectedly, he and his wife began to plan a wedding anniversary celebration. The plan was to invite her parents and spend time together, showing them the kind of daughter they had raised. Oleg contacted his father-in-law and invited them to the event. Oleg received a positive response from him, but the same could not be said for his mother-in-law, whose disapproval was evident even during their phone conversation. With his own parents, Oleg informed them that the celebration would be modest, held at a cafe, to avoid any surprises. On the evening of the celebration, Yana had time to prepare salads and hot dishes, as well as order additional food for the occasion. When Olga arrived with her husband, she openly showed her disdain for Oleg's apartment, making it clear that she was only present for the sake of her daughter. Once everyone sat down at the table, Oleg seized the opportunity and addressed those present. "I have a little surprise for you," he said, turning to Yana. "Please look at the screen. I think our parents will find it interesting too, despite some disapproval," he continued, subtly referencing his mother-in-law. He then played the video clip he had prepared earlier. At first, the video showed photos of the couple together over the years and clips of their vacations. His wife smiled and clapped her hands happily. But then, in stark contrast, the footage from the car's recorder played, a video that shocked everyone at the table. At the most crucial moment, the mother-in-law gasped in horror, covering her mouth with her hands. She was at a loss for words, her eyes wide in disbelief. Yana's father sat solemnly, his gaze heavy with disappointment, as he looked at his daughter. "Thank you for your attention," Oleg said. "By the way, Dmitry, the man you see on the screen is married and raising a young child. Now you can take your treasure home, or perhaps offer her to a brothel where she will find a more suitable husband." At this point, the unfaithful wife burst into tears, and a look of humiliation appeared on her mother-in-law's face. She stood up abruptly, grabbed her purse, and headed for the exit, throwing Oleg a frown and a guilty look. Yana's father took his daughter by the hand and led her toward the exit, while she continued to cry and argue with him. Left alone in the apartment, Oleg felt a warm sense of accomplished revenge spreading through his body. He sat down on the sofa, looking around at his surroundings. Perhaps it was all for the best. His wife wouldn't have made a good mother because she hadn't matured. The uncovered infidelity had only confirmed Oleg's beliefs. Cheating Secrets podcast like me